In the next couple of lectures, we will create a cute heart explosion animation like this one. And same as with the bubble burst animation, first, we need to draw a sprite that we're going to explode. That is a cute heart. Let's go ahead and draw it right now. I'm going to the File menu in Photoshop and creating a new document. Changing the width and the height to be 1500 pixels and making sure that the resolution is set to 300 pixels per inch. Great. Then, same as we did before drawing the bubble, let's color the background in dark gray. Awesome! Now we're ready to start drawing our cute heart. Let's pick the red color from the swatches and make it a little bit darker, like so. Then, I'm selecting the ellipse tool here, holding the Shift key and creating a small circle like this. It looks like the color is too bright, so I'm picking a bit darker one and making sure it is selected up here in the Shape properties. Awesome! Next, let's create a new layer and switch to the Rounded Rectangle tool. Make sure that the same red color is selected, that there is no stroke, and that the radius of the rounded corners is set to 45 pixels. Then let's create a rounded rectangle overlapping the lower part of the circle like this. The width of the rectangle must be exactly the same as the diameter of the circle. If you didn't manage to get the perfect width, you can press Ctrl+T and make the necessary adjustments. This seems to be perfect. Now I'm selecting both of these shapes in the Layers list, clicking the right mouse key and selecting Merge Shapes. Awesome! Now we can move these layers together, because they've become a single shape. Wait, that's not a heart, you might say. Don't worry, we're going to make it look like one. I'm pressing Ctrl+T and moving the mouse cursor to the shape corner so that the cursor starts to look like this. Then I'm holding the Ctrl key and dragging the mouse to the right like so. When you hold the Ctrl key, the shape rotates in jumps like this. And each jump is worth exactly 15 degrees. Let's stop at 45 degrees and press Enter to apply the change. Awesome! Next, I'm pressing Ctrl+J to duplicate the shape. As you can see, a new layer has appeared here on the right, and that it's exactly the same as the shape we've created before. Now let's go to the Edit menu in GT, Transform in GT, Flip Horizontal. Fantastic! And now all that's left to do is to drag these new shape to the right, like so that the round corners at the bottom are aligned perfectly. Perfect! It finally looks like a cute heart. Let's merge the shapes again to keep the layers organized. Awesome! Now I want to place the heart right in the center of the canvas. I'm doing this manually like this until I see these purple lines. Great! Let's zoom in to see the heart better. Right now the shape looks quite flat, so I want to add the shadows and the highlights to give it a 3D feel. So let's do the shadows first and pick the dark red color for that. Yes, this should do it. Then I'm creating a new layer, switching to the Curvature Pen tool, and start creating a half-moon shaped curve like this. Then let's add a few clicks down here and close the shape. Good. As you can see, the shape has the same color as the heart. I want it to be darker, to act like a shadow. So I'm going to the Shape Color properties up here and selecting the darker red that we've picked before. Awesome! The color of the shape has been updated. And now, same as we did with a gradient fill of the bubble, let's hold the Alt key and click right between the layers to create a clipping mask. Fantastic! Now our cute heart has got a cartoonish shadow. If you are not happy with the shape of the shadow, you can make the adjustments. My favorite way of doing that is by pressing Ctrl plus T and enabling the warp mode here above. Good. Now we can control the shape as if it is made of clay. Feel free and drag different parts of it until you're happy with how it looks. I think this looks fine. So I'm pressing Enter to apply the changes. Awesome! Now to make the heart look more like a 3D, let's add a highlight as well. I'm selecting the bright color of the heart and changing it to a very light pink. Good! After that, I'm creating a new layer, selecting the pen tool, and making sure that the field color is set to that light pink. Great! And finally, let's create a new shape right here on the right side of the heart. It should also be something like a half moon, and you don't need to make it perfect. Let's place it a bit lower. Great! Now the heart's got this glossy look, and it looks even more cute and cartoony than before. And lastly, let's add a final touch and create a stroke around the heart. I'm selecting the heart shape here in Layers list, then going to the Layer and GT, Layer Style and GT, Stroke. Let's add the color to match the color of the shadow, and the size of the stroke should be 8 pixels. Yes, that looks good to me. We can say that our cute heart sprite is finally ready. This is also going to be the first frame of the explosion animation. So let's collect all of the layers except for the background and place them under a new group. I'm calling this new group a heart. Awesome! And since it should be the first frame, let's switch off the visibility of the background layer, then press Ctrl plus Shift plus Alt plus E to copy and merge the layers as the new one. Then, let's rename the new layer to Frame 1. Excellent! You've learned how to draw a heart shape and also make it look cute and cartoony. In the next lecture, we'll animate it. So see you there. In this video, we will start animating our cute heart. We've already got a frame number 1, so let's proceed to the next frame right away. On the frame number 2, I want the heart to inflate and become larger right before it explodes. If we'll just duplicate the frame number 1 and make it bigger, it will damage the quality of the image. There is a better way to enlarge this heart by using the source layers. I'm selecting the Heart Layers group and pressing Ctrl plus J to duplicate it. Okay, the new Layers group called Heart Copy has been created right above the previous one. Let's drag it to the top of the Layers list and disable the visibility of the original Layers group. Great. Now, as you can see, we've got 3 shapes in the new Layers group. Let's select all of them and press Ctrl plus T to modify their size. Placing the mouse cursor to the bottom right corner of the selection and dragging it down like so. Yes, this size should be right. Pressing Enter to apply the change. Awesome. You might be wondering, how is it different from making adjustments to the frame number 1? The trick is that the source layers were created by merging different shapes and by using the pen tool. So they are actually vector objects. It means that they can be scaled without any loss of quality, as opposed to the frame number 1, which consists entirely of a single rasterized image. And so making it larger will also make it look blurry. This is another good reason to keep this source layers. Well, back to the frame number 2. I'm switching off the visibility for the background layer and pressing Ctrl plus Shift plus Alt plus E to merge the bigger heart into a new layer. Let's rename it to Frame 2. Good, bringing it to the center of the canvas. Perfect. Now the bigger heart looks just the same as the smaller one, and it doesn't feel like it's about to explode. Let's make it look more interesting. I'm selecting the last layer we've created and pressing Ctrl plus T. Here, let's enable the warp mode. Okay, this mode allows us to modify the heart in such a way that it will look like it's inflated. To create this effect, let's start moving the corners of the mesh, like so. Try to make them look even. Great. Next, I will move the corners of the central cell to create even more tension. The heart starts to look a lot heavier. Finally, let's move the handles a bit aside to complete this effect. A tiny adjustment here in the center. Awesome. Now it really feels like the heart is getting inflated from the inside and the pressure is going to cause an explosion. I'll make a couple of small changes here at the top. Yeah, that's better. On the next frame, the heart will start to tear apart. We'll have to make it even bigger than this and cut a hole in the center. Let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to use the Heart Copy Layers group as a source material again. Let's select all of the shapes, press Ctrl plus T, and make them a bit bigger than before. Good. Then I'm switching off the background layer again and pressing Ctrl plus Shift plus Alt plus E to merge the shapes into a new layer, dragging the layer to the top of the list and renaming it to Frame 3. Awesome! Now let's align it to the center like this. Looks about right. Okay, now it's time to make it look inflated too. We will take it to extreme this time. Again, I'm pressing Ctrl plus T and enabling the warp mode. Moving the corners of the mesh one by one. Then opening up the handles up here. Moving the corners of the central cell. And also the handles down here. Fantastic! The heart looks even more inflated than on the previous frame. And now let's add a tear in it. I'm going to use the curvature pen for this task, just like I did with a bubble in the previous section of the course. Changing the type to path. Okay, I'm planning to rip this heart into 3 main pieces. This one on the left, the one on the right to be symmetrical, and the bottom part. The hole in the center should be created accordingly. I'm making a few clicks from left to right to make this curve for the bottom piece. Then move into the right like so, and proceed into the left as well. You don't have to make symmetrical curves. Actually, the more random it looks, the better. Closing the shape. Great. Then I'm right-clicking inside the shape and choosing Make Selection option. Keeping the parameters as is. Okay. Lastly, let's go to the Select menu Inverse and press Delete. Perfect. We've got an inflated heart with a cool-looking tear in the center. I think that's good enough for the frame number 3. On the frame number 4, the heart will split into pieces. The right side will go further to the right, the left one to the left, and the bottom one will move down. Since the heart is not a single shape anymore, it will be easier to draw these parts from scratch rather than using the source layers once again. So, I'm picking the base red color of the heart, creating a new layer and switching to the pen tool. Make sure they change the type back to shape. Good. Then I'm starting to create a curve here close to the right part. A few clicks for the inner edge, and closing the shape. Looks nice, actually. Let's create the left piece as well. I'll start from the inner edge this time and then proceed to the curve up here. Looks like this piece is too close to the center. Let's move it to the left like this. Nice. Now, the last piece should be down here. Let's make it a bit sharper at the bottom, similar to the lower tip of the heart. Awesome! All right, there seems to be a lot of shapes already, so let's place them under a separate group, naming it Frame 4. Okay, next I'm going to add a few smaller pieces in the central part here to make this explosion look richer. Let's create one up here. Another one here. One near the left part. And the last one close to the lower piece. Let's see how it looks without the previous frame. Pretty cool, actually. Let's add a few tiny pieces here and there. Looks even better now. I've noticed that the new shapes have been created outside of the layers group, so let's fix that. Good. Now, some of the smaller pieces will be thrown further away from the center than the large pieces. So let's add one here. Another one here on the right. The next one up here. A couple of them down here. Great. This area looks a bit empty to me, so I'll put another piece here. Yeah, now it looks complete. To keep the lawyers organized, let's merge all of these pieces into a single shape. There are just too many of them, and we will apply the same effects to them anyway. Yeah, much simpler now. It's time to add a final polish to this frame, and that is the shadows and the highlights. I'm picking the shadow color with an eyedropper tool and creating a new layer. Then, selected the curvature pen tool and making sure that the shadow color is selected for the shape fill. Great! After that, I'm making a few clicks on top of the left large piece following the shaped curve. Then creating an outer edge, like so. Good. Of course, the shadow should not be seen outside of the shape boundaries. So let's hold the Alt key and link between these two layers to create a clipping mask. Nice. You can adjust the position of the shadow and its shape if you like. I think that looks pretty awesome. Let's go ahead and create shadows for the rest of the heart pieces here. Well, since the procedure is the same as I've shown you just now, I will speed up the video to save you some time. All right, we've created the shadows for pretty much all of the larger pieces, and now they look much more convincing than before. Next, let's add some glossy highlights for them, same as we did for the original heart. I'm picking the light pink color of the highlights and creating a new layer at the top of the frame 4 inches group. Switching to the pen tool and changing the field color accordingly. And lastly, making a few clicks on top of the right piece to create this thin shape. I think it looks great. Let's go ahead and add another one down here. A smaller one right next to it. Another one here, and so on. This one seems to be unnecessary. Let's delete it. Add a few final touches. Perfect. Lastly, let's add a stroke to complete the cartoony look. I'm selecting the first shape in this group and then going to the Layer menu and GT, Layer Style and GT Stroke. I'm going to keep the settings the same as for the original heart. Therefore, I'll just click OK. Fantastic! The frame looks complete and also quite cartoony. Let's disable the visibility for the background layer and merge the shapes into a single frame, calling it Frame 4. Awesome! And that brings us to the end of this lecture. In the next one, we will complete the heart explosion animation. So see you there! All right, let's go ahead and complete our heart explosion animation. On the frame number 5, each one of these larger pieces will split into smaller ones. Also, all of them should move farther away from the center. So let's pick the base color with an eyedropper tool. Create a new layer above frame 4 inches and switch to the pen tool. Good. Changing the field color to the base red. Okay, I'm starting from the right piece and making a few clicks above it like so, creating a curve for the inner edge. And closing the shape. Great. Making another smaller piece here. And the other one here. And so on. There are going to be a lot of pieces on this frame, so let's make a separate layers group now, calling it Frame 5. All right, let's proceed to the left piece. The lower part of this piece is going to move left and a bit down, and the upper part left and up. I'm starting with the upper part. Okay, the shape looks fine, but the angle looks a bit weird. So let's press Ctrl plus T and rotate this piece down, like so. Yeah, that's definitely better. Creating a bit smaller piece down here. Another one here in the middle. And the last one here. Good. Now for the large piece at the bottom. It's going to move down and also become much smaller. I'm trying to make it look sharp too. Nice, creating another piece here. And another one next to it. Great. Now don't forget about the smaller pieces too. We need to define the next position for each one of them, same as we did for the droplets of the bubble. This will ensure that the movement of the pieces looks smooth and fluent. Each and every one of them should have its own next spot on the new frame. This one is going to move up here. This one will move aside like this. This one will move somewhere here. And so on. You can also create new droplets to make the explosion look richer. Well, this process is going to take a while, so I'll speed up the video for you. All right. Once all the pieces are created, let's collect all of the layers in the frame 5 inches group and merge them into a single shape. Good. I'm also adding a stroke to it right away. Nice. Well, it's time to make these heart pieces look cartoony too. Same as always, I'm starting with a shadow, creating a new layer, picking the shadow color, and switching back to the curvature pen tool. I'll start with this piece on the left and create a shape above it. Changing the field color to the darker red, holding Alt key and clicking between these layers to create a clipping mask. Great. Next, I'm creating a shadow for the upper piece here. I don't mind if the shadow covers a few smaller pieces below, creating a clipping mask. Awesome. I'm pressing CTRL plus T, enabling the warp mode and adjusting the shape of the shadow so that it fits the original piece better. Perfect. Now let's create a shadow for the right piece, same as before. I'm creating a large shape that covers a few smaller shapes as well and creating a clipping mask. Making a few adjustments using the warp mode. Great. And lastly, a shadow for the lower piece, using the warp mode here as well. I think it looks pretty good. Finally, let's add a few glossy highlights for the larger pieces. I'm creating a new layer, changing the field color to the light pink that we've used before, and creating a thin shape here like this. Good. Another one here on the right. A small one here. Then here on the left. And here at the bottom too. Feel free to adjust the position of the highlights to fit the original shapes better. A few last touches. Okay, I think that it looks pretty awesome. So let's disable the visibility for the background layer and press CTRL plus Shift plus ALT plus E to merge all of these shapes into a new layer, renaming it to Frame 5. Excellent. On the next frame, all of these larger pieces will become much thinner and will also split into several parts. Let's start with the right one again. Creating a thin, curvy shape like so. Let's move it here. Good. Making another one, a bit below. Then a smaller one here in the middle. And then defining the position for each one of the smaller drops. Don't skip any of them. Also try to make them a bit smaller than they were on the previous frame. Nice. Let's go ahead and place the shapes under a new layers group. I'm calling it Frame 6. Okay, also, it seems that all these pieces are quite small and adding a shadow will not have much effect. So instead, let's collect all of the shapes and change the field color to dark red. All right, that should do it. We won't have to add the shadows now. I'm proceeding to the large piece on the left and creating a smaller shape above it. Another one to the left, and so on. Again, I'm trying to create a motion for each and every piece here, making them a bit smaller on the new frame. This will take a few minutes to complete, so I will speed up the video again to save your time. Okay, this seems to be enough. Let's select all of the shapes in this group and merge them. Good. And same as always, I'm adding a few highlights to complete the cartoony look. Feel free to make adjustments if necessary. Great. And finally, I'm switching off the background layer, merging the layers into a new layer and renaming it to Frame 6. Excellent. Let's proceed to the next frame now. On the frame number 7, the heart pieces are dissipating. All of these pieces will become even thinner and will split again. Same as always, I'm starting from the right side, creating a curvy shape here, another one next to it, then here on the side, and so on. Okay, don't forget to place the shapes under a new group and call it frame 7. Good. Now creating the next positions for each one of the smaller pieces. And also let's make a few additional tiny droplets here and there so that the frame will look more interesting. A few here at the top. All right. Now let's make sure that the new shapes were created under the same group. And if not, let's fix that. And of course, once it's done, selecting all of the shapes in this group and merging them. Perfect. I think that all of these pieces are too small to add the highlights to them, so let's just disable the background visibility and press CTRL plus Shift plus ALT plus E to create a new layer as is, renaming it to Frame 7. Excellent. Frame number 8 is going to be the last one. Here, all of the pieces will leave just a few tiny traces, and that's all. I'm creating a motion for the key pieces. Then selecting all of the new shapes and creating a new group for them. Calling it Frame 8. Let's add a few last touches here and there to make it look richer. Awesome. And then merging the shapes into a single one to keep the layers organized. And after that, creating a new rasterized layer for this frame and renaming it to Frame 8 as well. Fantastic. All of the animation frames are finally complete. Let's enable their visibility and adjust the opacity for the last 3 of them. On the frame number 6, the layer opacity should be 75%. On the frame number 7, 50%. And 25% for the frame number 8. Great. This will make the dissipation look gentle. Now, same as we did for the bubble burst animation, I will save my work in 2 separate files. One will contain the source material, and another one just the final frames. I'm making sure that I work with the frames file and deleting all of the groups, leaving the frames layers only. Good. And finally, it's time to see how the animation looks while it's playing. Going to Window and GT, Timeline and GT, Create Frame Animation. Then clicking on the menu icon here and choosing Make Frames from Layers. Lastly, let's delete the frame number 1 on the timeline since it is just the background. Then select all of the frames here and enable the background for all of them at once, hitting play to check the results. Well, congratulations. You've just learned how to draw a heart explosion animation, and to me it looks smooth, cartoony, and cute. In the next section of the course, you'll get familiar with the dust explosions. And I'm looking forward to seeing you there.